Hi there, I'm Claire McDonald-Liu and this is the Family Health Lab. In today's conversation, I'm talking with Dr. Lucy Burns, a lifestyle medicine doctor helping thousands of women to thrive with a low-carb lifestyle. Lucy talks about life as an overweight GP, how she deals with the food challenges of raising teenage daughters, and how you can regain your health in these simple steps.
You're listening to the Family Health Lab. Healthy parents, healthy kids.
Thanks for joining me, Lucy.
Oh, thanks, Claire. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
I absolutely love following your work, and we've worked together a little bit on the Low Carb Roadshow. I was there as a presenter, and I absolutely loved that. And watching you on social media, you and your partner in crime, Dr. Mary Barsom, you're on a phenomenal journey to help women to achieve optimal health. So, I just thought we'd dive in, have a chat, and find out more about what you're working on.
Sure, absolutely. So it's interesting. Sometimes people always go, "Oh, who do you work with?" And honestly, I've realized I just kind of work with people who are carbon copies of me. So they are women. We do work with men as well, but the majority of our people are women who are sort of in their 50s, give or take 10 years either side, who have probably done lots of dieting over their lives, who found themselves in the position of, despite all the dieting over all the years, were, heavier than ever, but more importantly, metabolically unwell and developing, pre-diabetes, fatty liver disease, or even, further along the path to type 2 diabetes. Various health conditions who are now ready to do something once and for all.
And that's my experience when women tend to come to me, or clients, it's not just a weight issue. It tends to be they're collecting a list of issues, chronic health issues, and they're heading down that pathway. So it becomes a bit more complicated then. But I am really fascinated by the fact that you are seeking out, supporting women who are, like you say, a carbon copy of you. You've had your issues, and I would also comment, as well as helping women clients, you also, I think, are really supportive of GPs, particularly women GPs, and building a really supportive community to again help women's health. So should we have a quick dive into your health history and kind of
Sure.
what the changes were and the catalysts in your journey?
Yeah. So look, I grew up in the era of Elle Macpherson and the supermodel, where everyone was trying to get long, skinny legs, and, not realizing, of course, that genetics and, I was never going to look like Elle Macpherson, but I tried my hardest to and spent a lot of time on a low-fat diet, chopping, every scrap of fat off, no bread on my toast, nothing, no, vinegar on my salad, nothing, not a scrap of fat would pass my lips. And of course, food tasted pretty average, pretty bland, but in my head, it didn't matter because, it was this quest for thindom. And I had various, attempts at Weight Watchers, where I realized that actually all I was introduced at Weight Watchers, apart from the dieting culture, was a whole host of diet processed food. So they spent a lot of time promoting their products, which were, diet yogurts, diet muesli bars, diet snack bars, diet everything bars, and not really any time on nutrition or food, or even understanding that food plays such an important role in your metabolism. And if weight loss is what you actually want, well, then there are ways you can achieve that by changing what you eat. And it doesn't involve diet yogurt.
And you, on your website, your Real Life Medicine website, you use a phrase, imagine if everything we were told was wrong.
Yeah.
And is that the case then? Is that
absolutely. Because basically what happened to me was following all of this, either dieting, within an inch of my life, and then what would happen is that would become so intolerable, or alternatively I'd get to whatever was considered the goal weight, and then I'd just stop and go the other way, often on a bit of a bender, eating whatever lollies and chocolate I could find. And so then I found myself sort of mid or late 40s, heavier than ever, heavier than when I was pregnant, and I always put on a bucket load of weight with pregnancies. Yeah, fatty. And then I thought, oh, it doesn't matter. You know, I'm middle-aged now. My husband still loves me. I'll just buy elastic pants. And then I got this sort of fatty liver, pre-diabetes diagnosis. My dad has type 2 diabetes. And I just thought, oh. And it was sort of like this dawning where I realized that actually, unless I do something, it's not going to stop. Like I'm just going to head down the path of getting heavier and heavier, which in itself, I'm not even that fussed about that, but probably getting sicker and sicker. And so that was the bit that I went, okay, I can't just keep living it this way. And so then it was interesting. I actually just stumbled across low carb from a friend, another GP who we were going on holidays with. And like me, she'd done all the yo-yoing. And so when we went on holidays, she was in what I would call the skinny phase. And I go, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? She said, I've ditched the carbs. And I'm sitting on the beach piously eating this packet of carrot sticks. And at first I thought, oh, I'm not doing that. Like, honestly, giving up fruit, no way. And then over the course of the fortnight, I just was watching what she was eating, and it was all this amazing, delicious food that I thought was still off limits, So she was having garlic butter on her steak and, eating berries and big lashings of cream. And I just thought, oh my God, all right. And so again, I just initially approached it like any other diet. I was going to do it like a diet. And so I learned about it, learned macros. And then over time, the thing that happened was that the food noise in my brain stopped. And I credit that to the increased fats in my diet suddenly meant that, and probably an increased protein, to be honest, suddenly meant that I wasn't chatting all the time about will I or won't I. And and I just haven't done that off on again. I'm just on it for 5 years.
And I love that talk about the chatter, because when I went on the low carb diet initially for my children's health, we didn't even call it low carb diet at the time. It was gut healing. So we took all the sugars, all the starches out. So realised later, it could be defined as carbohydrate restricting. And then, it was the not needing a sweet biscuit or a chocolate bar with my coffee in the morning, and those things had gone, and the chatter about food, the constant noise, thinking about when the shop was going to close or what was going to happen for dinner as I was doing other tasks. That food noise, it's constant for most of us, just dialed out, and it's like, oh, peace. And I can get on with my day and be much more active, much more productive. And just, that's from feeling satiated. It's not from having to think, plan, and not having those willpower battles that we all struggle with. And it's just eventually willpower is just going to give out at some point. And you've made a comment on your Instagram. You're prolific on Instagram and social media. Recently, you put a comment out about willpower, and it was saying that I think hunger is not a weakness. It's not a moral kind of failing in you. And that's a lovely way to think about it.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because when people go, oh, I'm hungry, they go, what? You can't be hungry again. Like, what's wrong with you? Like you're some kind of greedy goat. And interestingly, if you swapped the word thirsty for hungry, nobody has the same judgment. No one says, what? You're thirsty again? You just drank. You can't be thirsty again. But with hunger, it's this hunger has been tied so closely with greed that people feel ashamed to be hungry, when honestly it's a physiological, hormonally driven process.
And shamed as well. So shaming themselves, feeling guilty, feeling like basically a loser for failing again and picking up the cake or the biscuit or even the bread now. And society shames them. It's in the press all of the time, the way the discourse is on nutrition. But what is happening? How does that chatter shut down? What is happening in the body there? What happened for you that shut down your noise?
Yeah, so I often describe, I think there's two processes that go on. One's well documented, which is our drive for dopamine. And so dopamine is part of our reward system. We know that hyperpalatable foods are part of that reward system. That particularly processed, junk food it's like it just attacks that. It's like it's on steroids for that reward system. So all food activates dopamine to some degree, but because that's part of human drive, that's part of our survival mechanism. But it's just that it's been hijacked by processed food, which then just creates this terrible loop where the more you have, the more you want, the more you want, the more you have. You just get stuck on it. And it's like, in some ways, it's a bit like the insatiable thirst. It doesn't matter how much you have, it's never enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that just exhausting, because you'd have a bit and you go, oh, good, I'm so full, or I'm done, or I've had enough, but you're still cramming the last row of chocolate in, even though you don't even want it. So there's that. But the other thing that's interesting and emerging is, I think, just our gut bacteria. And we know that there are certain phylum in our gut bacteria, particularly a colony called Firmicutes, that does seem to thrive on sugar. So again, the more sugar that's available, the more this phylum grow, the more they want. And we know that our gut bacteria now talk to our brain.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some thoughts around that as one of the drivers of our cravings. And the thing that I think has probably happened, and probably to lots of us, is that you'll go on, again, the typical diet. And so you'll stop a lot of that for maybe a couple of months, and, maybe even 3 months, and that'll feel like a very long time. And then it just comes back in. And I don't think that's enough to change your gut bacteria. Whereas, like you and I have been doing this for a long time now, and I reckon my gut bacteria are completely different to the gut bacteria I had 5 years ago. And I think that's just time in the game. So now sweet things, even if I have them, they don't do what they used to, which was just start a cascade of like a war. But conversely, they also they're not a big deal to me anymore. Like, I never thought I'd be one of those people that can take or leave cake, and now I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love it when it's wheeled out at any event and it just does nothing for you. Absolutely. It's just like a switch has gone.
Yeah.
And I had such a sweet tooth. I blame it on working in one of my first jobs. I worked in a bakery. And at the end of the day, all the cakes were ours. We couldn't keep them, so so that started a habit that I hadn't realised had developed. I had developed such a sweet tooth until it was totally gone. And now any party or anything like that, it just does nothing for me, which is just amazing that could be somebody else's reality with the right tools and information, and then also, most importantly, support system, because what's happened is we have decades and decades of food training and habit setting, but it's also our cultural norms, and it's part of our emotional reward system. It's the social, it's cultural. So to just go cold turkey and switch, often we're not built like that. So I've ran different support groups and one-to-one coaching, and I love support groups because by week 3 people are bouncing in with ideas and supporting each other when somebody's got a challenge. And back to that comment that it's not a moral weakness, this is society's got food wrong, in my opinion, and for those reasons that you were just setting out there, we need a lot of support to unpick. So you're putting a lot of information out there. The roadshow I briefly mentioned was a series of talks and presentations, whole day presentations across the whole of Australia. It was so cool to see that in action and see people just, frothing at the information and just taking part and asking questions. Oh, it was just gorgeous. And then you've got the podcast, you've got your socials, you've got your groups. On your podcast, one of your first episodes, I think it could have been your first ever episode, you called it Overweight Doctors. So why did you go there? Why did you talk so candidly, so openly about what it felt like to be dealing in health and talking about people's weight and chronic illness, but not having a handle on your own at that point?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. It's always the identity of a doctor is that somehow, and again, I mean, it's changed a little bit over the years, but certainly in times gone by, the doctor was sort of, the demigod of health and knew everything, but
Mm.
is very good at not practicing what they preach for many reasons. Some of it is their role as carers, their role in a very tight health system that has no room means that they're often overworked and overstressed, and so don't have the time to make good choices, around either food or exercise or things like that. But for me, it was actually about that food was used. Food was like a soother, like a tool to soothe or numb or negate any unpleasant experiences. So that unpleasant experience could range from, boredom to a task I didn't want to do, to a difficult long day, to an altercation with a patient or family member or anything. And it just meant that I would go running to the biscuit tin and basically stuff in as much as I could to feel a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I didn't even really have a lot of awareness around that. I kind of knew that I would cajole myself into, so say I knew I had a day and it was like back-to-back bookings and it was going to be, tight and I'd have no time for lunch. I'd always stop at the shop on the way, like the petrol station, and get myself a bag of Maltesers and have them in my top drawer. And so between patients, I'd sort of pop one in and it would be like a little hit to keep going. And it was
Malteser hit.
Yeah. And so, and this was just standard practice. Like this is, I just did this most days. And I think what happens when initially, if somebody had said to me, I'm taking away your Maltesers, Lucy, I would have said, no, because they were my crutch. They were my tool. They were my thing. And so it wasn't until I learned new strategies to manage my mind or manage uncomfortable emotions or deal with stressors that I then didn't need that tool. Like it was just a crutch and I could take it away. But I think sometimes, and in fact, that's what I reckon dieting does. It just takes away the crutch, but it doesn't give anybody any other tools, no other mechanisms, no other ways to, change their thoughts or anything to self-soothe or self-calm.
And that's an interesting point, I think, to delve into a little bit, because you're very much about the mindset, how empowering these women that work with you or that follow you and get information from your different sources to change their mindset if they want to give them the resources, the tools, and empower them. So you've come to the point that mindset is key. And for me, working in nutrition coaching as a nutritionist for a number of years, it's not the food. If it was the food, I could put the information on my website, and here you go, here's the leaflet, download this, or here's a book if I want to expand it more, and off you pop. But it's obviously not, because we need more to change that. So for me, it's behavior first, and the support around that, and the food follows. So do you want to talk more, because you have so much emphasis on mindset and helping these women gain control, and you use a number of different tools in as part of your whole support system.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is. There's no one size fits all, and there's no one tool for everybody. And I think everyone needs, a choice of tools, and like it's why it's called a tool, I guess, a little box. So we use, various psychological modalities. So, CBT is one of our big bases, which is really just helping people reframe their thoughts. So simple, like a simple thing is that for lots of us, food scarcity and food wastage is a huge ordeal. And people will come, and particularly when I worked in my clinic, they'd come and to come and see me in the clinic was pretty expensive. And so they'd come in and they've paid their money, and then they'd say, oh, look, I'll start in a couple of days because, I've just bought a packet of Tim Tams and I don't want to waste them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, so interesting, isn't it? Because, Tim Tams are what, $2? And that's what I'd say. Okay, you've just paid $300 to see me and you're worried about $2.
That's interesting. I had clients who would say, I've just bought a bag of rice or chapati flour, because back in England, working in the NHS, I was like, okay, well, how long does that take to use that up? Oh, 6 months to a year. I'll start then.
Yeah. I know. But look, probably, I'm sure you grew up with a similar phrase, but we grew up with, you've got to eat everything on your plate because there are children starving in Africa. And so every day, every dinner, when you were full, you'd get the line, eat everything on your plate. There are children starving in Africa. There are children who would love to have this food. And, we cheekily said, we'll send it to them. But
we did as well.
Yeah. But the idea of throwing it out feels sinful. Like it's to avoid throwing it out, they will eat it. And so we have a little phrase, which is, your body is not the bin. You don't need to eat it to get rid of it, because that's when you eat for that reason, that's what you're treating it. Your body is just the bin. You're eating it. You're like a Hoover just to get rid of it. And that also plays into the mindset of, we call it the stuff it button, which is when maybe you've got a plan and maybe somebody does come along with a piece of cake or some and you can't resist, so you have one, and then your brain goes, oh, and it will either do two things, like, oh my God, it's like we've been let out, we've escaped, and so it'll start just looking for everything in sight and it'll just go on a rampage. Or alternatively, it'll be like, well, there's that cake sitting in the fridge looking at me, I'll just get rid of it. And so that you eat it to get rid of it. And
yes.
you just don't need to do either of those.
Yes. And a lot of that mindset of, I've ruined it now.
Yeah.
I might as well just go for it and keep going because I've just ruined it. I'm useless. All of those negative thoughts and those patterns. So yes, that's a real problem. So your tools and your strategies and your ongoing support helps people to work through their own barriers and challenges and have strategies in place that are unique for them.
Yeah, and I think stories, like we love putting stories in, fables, if you like, even analogies, because it just adds a dimension to it that your brain will comprehend. So for some people, I'll say to them, just throw it out, and they just can't. So we go, okay, how about this concept? What if, you'd said to me that you were going to clean out your garage on Monday, and so by Monday it's all going to be sparkling clean, and that's great. So you start cleaning it out, and you got rid of the old rakes and the old broken surfboard that's in there, and you've put something outside, and then all of a sudden it sort of found its way back in. Would you then go around to all your neighbours and ask for all their junk to put back in your garage because you're going to stop cleaning it now and you're going to start again tomorrow? You just wouldn't, because that doesn't make sense. But that's what we do when we go on a food rampage after we've had a little whatever you might want to call it. And so you don't have to do that. You don't have to wait till tomorrow. You don't have to go around to the neighbours and gather all their junk. You can just stop right now.
I love the analogy, and I hadn't thought of it like that. I might nick that. That's cool.
Yeah, go for it.
But it is lovely to kind of give people the different ways to work with their brain to think about this, because words, like I'm saying, printed resource and just words aren't enough. So it's just having that kind of different visual often to just switch that thinking, which then switch that behaviour, and then the actions, and then the results down the line. So that's really lovely. On getting it's a low carb lifestyle, isn't it? Carbohydrate restriction that you advocate, but generally around more real food rather than. Mm-hmm.
And we also prefer the term carbohydrate reduction. Because interestingly, restriction again can send shivers up people's brains, understandably. They don't want to be restricted. They want. So we are pretty intentional about our language. And I think one of the other tools that we offer to people is hypnosis, mainly because the language, the thoughts, the sentences, they're often buried deep in our subconscious. We don't even know we have them. And so many times people will come and say to me, Lucy, I don't even know why I did it. I don't know why I did that. I didn't want to do it, and suddenly I'm doing it. And it's because it's sometimes in your subconscious brain to behave the way you do or think the way you think, and you don't even have that awareness. So tapping into hypnosis is super powerful, and we spend a lot of time on language and just helping people reframe the way they speak in general, but in particular the way they speak to themselves, because they're listening. And as you mentioned before, people get into this phase of berating and beating themselves up and really being pretty harsh and using pretty harsh language they would never use to anyone else or say out loud. But it's super unhelpful because just another one of our little phrases is you can't hate yourself thin and you can't berate yourself well.
Yeah, that's so true. Kindness and compassion and learning and unpicking things as you go along and facing different challenges. It's a long road. I like the term lifestyle myself because we talk about diet and diet culture and all of the negative connotations around that. But really, a lot of this damage is being done because we live in a toxic food culture.
Yeah.
So this becomes a permanent change, a permanent kind of learning new foods that work better. Like you were saying on your holiday, the doctor that inspired you eating those delicious, tasty foods, that's the way I see these foods. I see them as nourishing. That satiation where you're full up and you're satisfied and you're not then craving something afterwards. It's just clear mind, clear thinking, reduction in brain fog, better sleep, so many different benefits to the whole thing, food freedom, better control, all of that. But it's still not perfect. I don't know many people in the low carb world who are absolutely perfect. And in one of your talks, recent talks, you mentioned that who here in this room has got their food lifestyle completely on track, exactly spot on and perfect. So it's work in progress, and it's a process, isn't it? So, but going on to your low carb or your particular food style you're eating, how does that look? And I suppose it's adapting at different times and to suit your different needs at different times. But what's a typical day in the Burns household? How does your food look?
So I live with my husband and 2 adult girls. So another one of our little phrases is you're the boss of you and they're the boss of them, and it's up to them to choose what they want to eat. And I think this causes a lot of angst for people when they see other people eating things that, they perhaps know are not their best choices or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's, with families, it's when you've got little small kids and you're the food provider, it's actually easy. It might seem hard because they might have tantrums at the supermarket still, but it is a way easier than the teenagers.
Totally. Absolutely. You're in control as much as you have a challenge here and there at the party or the birthday or a bit of pushback. It's a different ball game to the teens. And you came to this when your girls were in their early teens? Or
So absolutely. And my 2 girls were vegetarian. One has just stopped being a vegetarian, for which I'm very happy, mainly because she was unfortunately diagnosed with celiac disease. And so as a vegetarian celiac, her choice was markedly reduced. And so as part of increasing her choice, she's started eating fish and chicken and bacon. So there we go. So for me, my day looks like, we have a formula at Real Life Medicine that it's simple. It's basically you pick your protein, because I think whilst low carb is helpful for women in particular, many of us under-eat protein, and protein's king for muscle development and just that thermogenic effect and to increase your metabolic rate. Because again, lots of us slowed our metabolic rate from decades of dieting, and I still see it. People start our program, and we just got an email from one lady the other day. We've just started a new round. She's been 5 days, and she's emailed to ask us why she's not losing any weight yet. And It's interesting because that, again, dieting taught you that you would lose. Like that was the whole point of it. You were doing this very hard thing, but there would be this amazing reward out of, you know, thindom. So the long way of answering your question in a very long-winded way is I sometimes I rarely have breakfast. I will only have breakfast if I'm going out for breakfast on holidays or something like that. Literally not hungry in the morning. Always have coffee though. Do still love coffee. Usually you'll have it black. Sometimes I'll have it with a bit of cream just because I feel like it. Lunch will be, and again, so we pick our protein. My lunch is usually an egg-based protein, so it's often a frittata. So I just love it. It's easy. So it's protein, add some veggies, add some fat, add some flavor, and I make it once a week and I just cook it all up and it's delicious. And then dinner is always a protein, so it'll be meat, fish, chicken, or add some veggies, add some fat, add some flavors. So sometimes it'll be traditionally what's called meat and 3 veg. Although the other day on my cooking show, I said I could call it meat and 3 veg, or I could call it a herb-crusted lamb fillet with a trio of green medley blah blahs, you know, drizzled in yada yadas and topped with crumbed goat's cheese or something. So so that's pretty much what it looks like. I rarely have sweet stuff anymore. I still get a little worried that if I had it too often, again, I would wake that sweet monster up, if you like. But I also don't fear it like I used to. So food's not fearful anymore. It's delicious and satiating. I probably have a little bit of dark chocolate most nights, but it's 90 or 95, like it's hardcore. Which I used to think tasted like dirt, and now I can't believe it. I actually eat it and like it.
Yes, tastes change, don't they?
They
Completely.
do.
Yeah.
They do. And I think that's one of the things that people fear is how they're going to live their life without their yada yada, you know, insert Maltesers, bread, pasta. But the person you become no longer needs them.
Mhm.
So you don't need to worry.
Yes, you do. You adjust, you adapt, and it's effortless. It's not like you have to keep having a conversation, keep kind of holding yourself back. It just lifts, and your palate just changes. In my personal experience, but working with many different people, they've made the transition, look better, feel better. I mean, we talk a lot about weight loss, and you know that's really, really important for people's health, their mental well-being, to kind of feel and look good, but so important for physical health, and it's linked to all of those different chronic diseases. But it's just those other benefits of changing lifestyle, just going without food, but cutting down on the foods that are going to cause disease and cause inflammation, and then setting better habits and patterns and modeling for those teens that eventually may, you know, hopefully come back and make better choices and know more about real food and how to cook and have the skills. Yes.
And look, my girls already have. They've already, in the 5 years that, you know, I've been living like I've just bang on about real food. It's never, again, you know, I think in this day and age, we do have to be mindful of disordered eating and eating disorders. So I've never talked about their food. I just keep banging on about eat plenty of protein. So every now and then I might go, have you had some protein today? So it's not so much have you had a whole ton of sugar? It's more about not what you know should take away, but what can you add in. So now they're out there, looking for protein in whole food sources, which I love, and they're active, and you know, and again, what is their goal? What's the goal for them? They don't need to, you know, and again, most kids don't need to lose weight. Most children are growing. They need stuff to help them grow. So their diet as a child is different to the diet of a 48-year-old overweight woman who was metabolically unwell. So of course it's going to be different. But I think we spend a lot of time, people come to us because they want to lose weight, and okay, we will go with that, but that's actually not our main aim. Our main aim is to help them with their metabolic health. They will feel so much better, and weight loss will come along for the ride. So the the danger being weight loss at any cost, which is, long-term severe calorie restriction or processed shakes or diet food. It's unhelpful. Long-term, nourishing, nurturing, restoring your body is the way to get long-lasting weight loss.
Yes, I really agree. And the lady who was asking you about why I'm not losing after 5 days, I get a lot of the questions about plateauing as well. And when you get to a stage where you've been losing, and then hit a period of time where you're not, I talk about the non-scale losses, or wins rather. So take measure so you can see, you can tell when there's more definition or there's change there, particularly around your waist or around your thighs. And then there's also taking a photo of yourself in your undies or your swimwear just for yourself, just so some people who've said to me, I'm not losing, it's plateaued, but then they've looked at the photo, they see definition coming in parts of the body that they weren't, looking at or expecting it. If you're looking at yourself a few times every day, you don't notice that those comparison photos taken weekly have just been so beneficial. And there's other ways the scales lie for a number of reasons: water, muscle, all of those reasons. And the numbers really shouldn't be the focus. Back to what you're saying about overall, picture of health, metabolic health, and optimizing and living your best life. I think that's just super important.
Oh, totally. And again, when people plateau, it's always important to define what a plateau is, because for some people it's, haven't lost anything for 2 weeks, and that's actually normal. That's not a plateau, that's normal. The second thing is to also understand that even a plateau is normal. And a plateau can be for months. If people's weight, if they've lost a significant amount of weight, they will plateau for months, and that's normal, and accepting that is okay. And it's almost like that's part of the training, if you like, of living this lifestyle all the time. And then, we always say to people, well, you need to look at all the levers as well. That it's not always just the food. Sometimes it's sleep, it's stress, it's movement, it's muscle, it's, lots of things that will all come together to create a healthy human whose body will potentially release its stored fat once all of those are optimized.
And at the centre of all of this is insulin-resistant key. Is it something that you do a lot of work with your clients on? Do you talk about it extensively? Because that's it's one of the key. Well, it's I feel like it's like just the key component that people are talking about weight. They're talking about potentially still talking about calories. Now people are obsessing about carbohydrates. And all sorts of macronutrients and different ratios, but insulin resistance, the people you're talking to, do they understand it? Do they know how important it is?
Yeah, because we talk a lot about it with the woodshed analogy, and that I think is helpful for people to understand. And so, for your listeners, as you know, I love another story. So the woodshed analogy is this idea that if you imagine your body as like a fireplace, and in fact in each cell in our body we've got like a fireplace, which is sort of your mitochondria, but our fireplace, if you're heating your home, you would use some kindling to get your fire started, and then you would add on some logs, and that would heat your home for half the day before you need to add another log on. But for people lots of us humans, we don't have kindling and logs next to the fireplace. So I often describe it's like your logs are out the back in a woodshed. So, you put your kindling on, and that's eating some carbs. So maybe you've had, a bit of toast or something, and then your body goes, rightio, well, I've digested all that toast and now I'm ready for something a bit more for my energy. So we'll go out the back and get a log, will we? So you toddle out the back, and when you go to your shed, you can see all this stored fat or all these stored logs, and there's padlocks on the shed. So even though you can see them all, even though they're all there, you can't actually open the door. And basically the thing that is the padlocks are your insulin, your level of circulating insulin. So if you've got high circulating insulin, you'll have lots of logs. lots of locks on your shed. And so you come back to your fireplace, by which stage it's starting to dwindle and not many, coals in it. And by, as the human, you're now starting to get hungry and a bit cranky and maybe a bit tired. And so you start eating again. And when we eat carbs all the time, all day, which is, again, what we were encouraged to do for a long time, 6 small meals a day to keep the metabolism fired, it's basically like trying to heat your house with kindling. You need a giant pile of it, and it just doesn't sustain you. So what we want to do is open the woodshed, and the way we do that is to reduce the amount of kindling. But there is sometimes a bit of a lag between when the woodshed opens, and that's where we say, well, you'll need to buy some logs or bring in some logs if you like. So at the start, often people do have high fat needs, and that can be okay. That can be things like, bacon and eggs and all the sorts of things that people go, oh my God, I haven't had that for years. I was never allowed to have that. Or it can be, adding cream to your coffee or any of those things. They're basically just bringing in logs. And as your insulin levels reduce, what happens is, and this was always classic where people would come in, Lucy, I can't eat bacon and eggs again. What else can I have? I go, oh, that's interesting. Tell me, what did you eat for breakfast for your whole life? Oh, 3 Wheat Bix and banana or something, or a bowl of porridge. Every day you had that. Yep, every day. Did you ever get sick of it? No. I go, and you've been eating bacon and eggs for 3 weeks and now you're sick of it? Yeah, you're not sick of it. You're just not hungry. Your woodshed's open. Your body's telling you, I don't need this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's so exciting, but you've never had that. And so, so they do, yeah. And that's when often we will say to people, look, once your shed's open, if you've got a lot of stored body fat, you can reduce your fat. That's okay. Fat's not compulsory. You don't need to ever go back to the low fat days of, eating dried toast and steak that tastes like an old boot. But you also don't necessarily need to be adding fat to everything either.
It's an important point, and I do love that analogy. I've heard it before, but it just makes so sense completely to give people that visual about what's happened with their body, because for lots of different reasons, but I think one of the key reasons is people believe that it's a normal part of aging now. So to give them that visual and to explain how it's built up to this point and how it's going to, tap back down, and then tweak it as you go along, reduce that dietary fat. The fat we intake, the butter, the mayonnaise, the oils, the dressings, that people feel that they need to load. Take that back down if you've got fat and you're accessing that on your body to give you energy and to burn that first. So I love that.
And I think that one of the things that happens in particular for women is menopause is like when we lose our estrogen. Estrogen is such a beautiful hormone because it helps us with insulin sensitivity, or it helps protect us from insulin resistance or high insulin. And all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but often over a few years, the estrogen levels drop. And so the things that we used to be able to do, in our diet aren't helpful anymore. So our carbohydrate tolerance, if you like, is reduced. So often that's when people go, well, how come I just, menopause? How come I put on weight over menopause? It's, bog standard insulin resistance.
And important that people have that information and then they can get the support and take the action. I really love how you're out there supporting women who, and because because you've experienced this, I think that makes all the difference, so that you can build this whole program and all of these resources that's going to be beneficial and really compassionately. And also you're supporting GPs and now with the Australasian Metabolic Health Society, Practitioner Society, giving out resources and information so that this that more people can access this support through their own local allied health practitioner, their local GP. That's what we really want to roll that out. But in terms of just to close, just what tips would you suggest? So somebody listening and they're not got started, how would you begin the journey, the very, very first steps, what would you say for day one or the first week?
Yeah. So there's two ways to look at it. I think that you don't have to look at it all as taking stuff away, like cutting out, giving up, all of that language that we use. It's about crowding it out, if you like. So adding in particularly protein. So we talk often about women needing a gram of it's easy. I mean, there's a million calculators out there, but for us, a simple way is you need a gram per kilo of current body weight. And, so if you weigh 100 kilos, you'll need 100 grams of protein a day. It doesn't have to be all in one hit, and to remember that a piece of steak, 100 grams of steak is not 100 grams of protein. It's, depending on how fatty the meat is, somewhere between 20 and 25 grams of protein. So the easiest way to lose weight is to eat your protein, not drink it in a shake or, blend it. It's to chew it. And that does, I mean, it's such a good trick because it's like you're lying around just burning calories for free while your body has chewed the protein, has to create enzymes, the stomach has to come in and do its mushing, and then it's cleaving and it's breaking it all down from big, long, amino acids or big, long protein chains into peptides, into a branch chain amino acids, all of that. You just lie around while that happens. Or we can outsource it to a factory who'll put it all into a shake with you and slap a lady shake stamp on it and tell you it's going to help. So whole food is the number one way to lose weight long term, if that's what you want. And I don't know anybody who ever wanted to lose 5 kilos only to put 10 on. And so start with that. Start with that simple formula of pick your protein, add some veggies, add a bit of fat if the protein is lean, and add some flavor. And it's so simple.
Really, really simple, because I think we need it to be that simple. Because first of all, people will just go, what am I going to do when I eat out? Or this occasion, or what's lunch? What's this? But to give them the tools rather than the meal plan, so that they can go, this is what I like. Beautiful. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
And how can they reach you? Anybody listening, how can they get in touch and follow what you're working on?
Yeah. So we're at Real Life Medicine. And so I'm with my, as you mentioned earlier, gorgeous Dr. Mary. And I mean, we do pride ourselves on being very real. I will turn up online in my dressing gown. I don't often wear a lot of makeup. Every now and then I'll drop a bit of a swear word, and it is what you see is what you get. So we both live in real life situations, have the same real life challenges that other people do. And, certainly I think the antithesis of a Fitspo influencer.
There's too many of those online, so it's a refreshing, honest, very open approach. I met at the roadshow, I met some of your aficionados, absolutely lovely group of people, so beautiful and so enthusiastic. They're getting a lot from this. So, and I love talking with you and catching up and listening to your talks. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Claire. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please make sure to subscribe. This really helps us to be able to create more content.